Chris Romulo. How you doing, sir?
Excellent, man. Excellent.
Listen, man, I know we talked a little bit off camera, but I just wanted to say thank you again. Chris, I've known you for what, 5, 6 years now.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, doing this whole online entrepreneurial thing. And from the moment I saw you, man, I was like, this guy's got it going on. Like, I didn't even know what Muay Thai was at the time. Well, maybe I did because I watched like Kickboxer growing up and things like that. But Van Damme fan and stuff like that. But then I remember I saw you and I saw Sarah, your wife, and I was like, okay, number one, like these people are really, really cool, really down to earth. But at the same time, this guy can kill me. So, so I was like, and they have an online business and they have a gym and they're in New York and they survived a hurricane. And from then on, man, I was like, these are good people that I want to keep around. And it's just been an awesome journey working with you and also just getting to know your story. And I wanted to bring that story to light. I also know you have your book, Champions Uprising, which I highly recommend people to read. But I kind of want to get that firsthand experience in terms of understanding, those areas in your life where you had to make a commitment and what that commitment ultimately meant, sacrificing, but how it eventually led you to where you are today, where now you have your own podcast. You're speaking, you got the book coming out. I mean, you're killing it, man. So I'm happy to have you on.
Yeah. It's just been a crazy ride. So yeah, it's cool to be here because every time I get to share what's going on, it helps me internalize it a little more and figure out where I'm going.
All right, man. So take me back to kind of like, your beginning, your upbringing in terms of like what that situation was, what that environment was, and ultimately, like at that time, did you see yourself doing what you were doing now, or what were the options at that point?
No, not at all. I mean, I grew up in Queens, New York, originally in Elmhurst, and then at about 8 years old, I moved to Queens Village, and I was just a scared, confused kid, and growing up in New York City, times were, things were, they weren't the best, but I was blessed enough not to be in the worst conditions. But my parents weren't, it was a typical dysfunctional family, and my father wasn't much in my life, even though he lived in the house. He had a gambling problem, so he would stay to himself.
Mhm.
So I remember at around 8 years old, I just remember telling myself, I'm gonna do something bigger with my life than what's in front of me. And yeah, that's been my underlying drive, or what people will call my purpose or my why. You
Yeah.
know.
So at 8 years old, and do you remember if there was a specific event that happened when you were eight that drove that mentality as far as like, you know what, like this can't be it.
So we moved from Elmhurst, from an apartment in Elmhurst, and then my parents bought a house in Queens Village, which was more of like I wouldn't call it suburban, but there are houses everywhere, but all the houses look exactly the same.
Mm,
So it was your typical. The neighborhood is actually built for World War II veterans way back in the day,
okay.
and so we bought this house, or my parents bought the house, and we moved in, and it just seemed like my dad was totally disengaged, right? He would sit at the kitchen table, and it wasn't obviously just one instant. I just noticed that he would just sit at the kitchen table every day and he wouldn't talk to anybody.
Mm,
And my mom would scream at him, and he would barely even recognize or answer her. So it was just like a realization of that. My parents weren't happy, and it kind of trickled into my world where I was unhappy, and I was just confused. Like, is there something that I'm doing wrong as a son, that my dad doesn't really pay attention to me,
mhm.
or my at the time it was just my other younger brother and my mom. So yeah, it just left me really confused, and just and then eventually I got really angry.
Gotcha. So how long did that occur? Like how long did that go on for where you were kind of like just figuring out whether you were the problem or not, or like what you could do to fix the problem, and you're kind of just confused and not know what to do with your dad situation, with your mother situation.
I mean, it's been going on for it. it's still going on. Like
Wow.
I go to therapy, and I see a therapist once a week to talk about, issues that I've had from my past. But my father's still he's still around. He lives in my mother's house,
Okay.
but they still don't have a relationship.
Hmm.
And my father lives in the basement, my mom lives in the rest of the house, and they don't talk to each other. And when they do talk to each other, it's still the same. So it's still an issue. Well, it's still a now that I'm out of the house and I'm a grown man with my own family, it's a little different, but it's still definitely an underlying issue.
Right, right. So still not picture perfect, and it seems like, you know, I mean, it's still the issue still hasn't been resolved. It seems like people are trying to move in the right direction, but at the time when you were 8, you were kind of feeling frustrated and kind of were just like this. You sense at a very young age that something wasn't right here, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned earlier that that turned it went from noticing that something wasn't wrong to eventually turning into anger, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
So
so what happened then? Like when you started getting angry, what was a typical day in your life back then? Um, and ultimately, how did you start to process that anger?
So with that and other things going on, like I was abused in the fourth grade by a teacher,
Hmm.
and I happened to be one of the only, no, the only Asian kid in my school, and maybe even the entire neighborhood. So
Hmm.
I was getting tormented in school on a daily basis. So with that, I try to find a place to hide, and I would run into my parents' garage, and I would just, I'd find things to, like, keep me busy. Like I would start doing push-ups,
Hmm.
doing pull-ups, and trying to exercise, and I guess, drown the pain in exercise. But then, between that and maybe not doing the right things in the street, and taking, my pain out on my brother. I would, because of the physical abuse that I was going through in school and the
Hmm.
mental abuse, I would take it out on the closest ones to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started making some really bad decisions from 8 years old. Uh, then 15 years old, it got really bad. I started drinking, started running the streets a little more, and experimenting with drugs, and just hanging out with people that weren't, making the right decisions just like me. And that I found comfort in that, because
Mm.
it was the same group of people that were probably going through the same stuff that I was. So
Probably the first time you felt like accepted, because it sounds like at school, you didn't have a protector there. The people of authority were kind of abusing that. Then at home, it was the same thing, just emotionally cut off. And so it sounds like you turned your garage into kind of like your safe space in a sense, and then found people that could relate to you and be like, okay, you know what, this is kind of like a new family for me.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and with the work that we do with the kids in our neighborhood now, like
Mm.
it's a lot of what kids go through, but obviously as a kid you think it's only your problem. You're the only one going through it, but a lot of kids go through it, and it's why a lot of kids, turn to gangs. But
Yeah.
again, it's something that, I've worked my way through. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect, but now I'm trying to help other kids, not go down that path that I went, that I could have landed in,
Yeah. And so
meaning jail or dead.
right, and I think I mean, just to the listeners, now you're married to Sarah, you have your son Gio, and you have an awesome dog named Bruce. And you, so from what I know, it's a very loving, supportive, and just a great environment, that family unit that you have right there. And so, just for the listeners, as bad as Chris's childhood might sound, there is a way to overcome that and get through that too. Where outside looking in, right? I see you, and I'm like, Chris has a family that loves and supports him, and I think that's a big thing to point out to our listeners, that no matter what happens, you can turn that story around and create something for yourself.
Yeah, and I'm blessed, and I'm happy that, yeah, I was able to take control. But it took a moment, right? It took a specific moment in my life to really turn things around. And that happened at around 20, 21 years old, where I got myself into a street fight that I could have avoided.
Mm-hmm.
And, I could have actually lost my life because this kid, beat me senseless. And, from that point on, that's where I shifted things. And I decided, this is not who I want to be. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be the street guy. I don't want to wind up in jail or dead like, some, people that I grew up, with that are unfortunately, either not around or in bad positions. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wanted to make sure that I turned that around. And, for some, for your listeners out there, like, it doesn't have to be that extreme of a case, but there is going to be a moment in your life where you're like, all right, I need to do something. And, hopefully it never becomes life or death.
So that sounds like a very big, like, burning the boats moment. Cause obviously there's that point when you were 8 years old and you were like, okay, like, I don't want to be like that. And that obviously turned into anger. And then you then encounter yourself in kind of a street fight. And how old were you when you got into that street fight?
I was around 20 or 21 years old, real early on in my adulthood.
Okay. So it's pretty much, is it safe to say that, like, between, a young teenager and being 20 years old, that you were pretty much just angry, running the streets, kind of experimenting with a lot of different things. Not necessarily all of them were good. um, and then at 20 years old, you get, the snot kicked out of you in a sense, where you could have almost died. So it sounds like, you kind of found this world where you were accepted by these other group of people that were going through kind of the same issues. But then at the same time, when you were 20, was it that world that you found secure that ended up beating you up? Like, was that a person also running the streets too, or was it something completely out of nowhere?
No, the kid that I fought
Mm-hmm.
or got beat up by,
Yeah.
he was like a typical kid in our neighborhood, like, probably, a broken family, like with,
Yeah.
the dad's not around, and he was in and out of, juvenile detention. And, I knew about who he was. I mean, I didn't know him as a person,
Mm-hmm.
but we had seen each other around. And, it's the typical, in New York, there's the typical, what you looking at kind of
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the ego, the real, young, aggressive ego kind of stuff. And that's pretty much what set it off, and
Gotcha.
again, I could have avoided it, but, I was trying to prove myself. And from when I was 8 years old, I remember telling myself, look, I want to make a name for myself. But unfortunately, that was the wrong way to do it. Go about in the streets and thinking that I was going to be like some tough guy street fighter.
Yeah.
And, I needed that lesson.
Gotcha. So in your mind, when that happened, did you feel like, this whole environment where I thought I was safe, being in the streets, did you ever feel like that environment turned its back on you when you got beat up in the streets like that? Or
I wouldn't say I had my, no, that the streets turned its back on me, but
yeah.
I came to the realization, like, this is, you know, even though the struggles that I was going through and that I didn't have any good role models, I knew that there had to be a better way.
Mm.
I knew there had to be a better way than just what I was going down. And, I just knew, again, that from 8 years old, I just knew I wanted to make a name for myself. And if the street life obviously wasn't working, I needed to change directions.
Oh, okay. So what, where did you change the direction to after that?
So, I had been involved with the martial arts early on.
Mm-hmm.
Between 8 and 15 years old. I gave up Taekwondo at about 15 to do the things that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that street fight put me back on a mission of trying to, find myself back in martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, at the time the internet, was not around. This was like early 90s. I mean, maybe it was around, but I just definitely wasn't involved in it. But, I started searching through the martial arts magazines, trying to find my way again to try to build me up and become a stronger, person, because I just never wanted, I knew I never wanted to be beat up like that again. And,
Yeah.
I knew martial arts was going to put me back on a better path. And I was flipping through a Black Belt magazine for all you old school martial artists out there, and there was this full page ad of it was become the title was Become an Unbeatable like street fighter.
Oh man.
And yeah, it was a full page ad. I'll never forget it. And like the subtitle was like ex-Navy SEAL teaches you hand-to-hand combat techniques, and that ad literally, it was like talking to me.
It spoke directly to you, man.
Right to me. And then I was like, okay.
Right message, right time, right meeting.
Perfect. It was the perfect storm, literally the perfect storm.
Okay.
So it was a 3-tape VHS series that you order and you have it sent to you. And, I was still living with my mom at the time. So I asked her if I could, order this VHS tape series and have it sent to the house. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, it shows up. And me and my brother, we start watching this stuff and, we start practicing. And like it was crazy. We were destroying my mom's living room and, trying to practice all these techniques. And she would scream at us. Yeah. And then she would, send us back out. It's like, go into your garage and do that stuff over there. Yeah. So, but what really stuck out for me was, the Muay Thai. The Navy SEAL was showing a bunch of different things like, jiu-jitsu, stick fighting, and knife disarming techniques. Right. But for some reason, the Muay Thai really stuck out, and that's what I gravitated towards. And I started practicing with my brother. I would, we got these pads that look like Thai pads at the time, but they were probably just some like makeshift stuff. Yeah. And I found it at a karate or martial arts supply store in the city. Right. And, I would tell them, hold the pads hard. I'm going to kick them as hard as I can. And we would do that. I must have done that for about a year until, I found this Muay Thai gym in the city. And I'll never forget. I walked by the place. It was on the Bowery, like on 5th Street. If any of your listeners know about New York City, and the Bowery at that time was, it was a rough place, and I don't remember why I was walking through that neighborhood, but I happened to walk by this. It was a storefront, and I remember walking by, and it was kind of dark and dim on the inside, and I kind of looked in for some reason, and I saw this heavy bag hanging in the back of the storefront. And I was like, well, what's that? Like, well, this is a boxing gym. I'd never been in a boxing gym. So I was scared. So I just walked by and I was like, no, I got to check this out. So I walked by, came back the other way and I looked in a little more. And then I saw like these ring posts and ropes hanging off of a makeshift ring. And I was like, oh man, this is like a boxing gym. But I was scared, I was scared to go in because, I was like, I don't feel like getting my face punched in right now. But so I finally worked up the courage and I walked in and that was it. Like from then on, like I met my Thai coach and my mentor and that started, my Muay Thai journey.
Gotcha. So before we get into the Muay Thai journey, let's rewind a little bit because you mentioned that, you got these VHS tapes from this Navy SEAL that was teaching you, how to become unbeatable, right? And at the time, you just got out of a serious street fight and you're like, I never want to feel like that again, right? So, that was the right message, the right sign, essentially, some people would say. And so at the time, when you were going through that whole VHS stuff, you were training with your brother in the garage, right? Beating each other up and kind of doing all that kind of stuff, right? Now, was your mind changing in terms of like what you're capable of doing, what your opportunities were while you were doing that for a year on your own?
Oh yeah, my mindset was definitely changing. I was thinking like, this is, not only is this an effective martial art, I was like, this is, doing more research and finding out about what Muay Thai was. Like, this is something that, it's a culture, it's a part of a philosophy of a country of people that, really, treat this like a sport. And then I also learned that through my first coach, but, it started helping me understand that that I could take this, this martial art of Muay Thai and do something other than just being, an unbeatable street fighter like
Right.
that. That I started to leave that mindset behind, that I wanted to never lose in the street. It wasn't about losing in the street anymore. It was about, becoming a better me,
Mm.
and doing something bigger with my life than with what I was, doing at the time.
That's interesting. So, like, did you have some kind of like role model between, or like when you were a teenager running in the streets at all?
You know what? I had come across, like Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Obviously as a kid, I saw his movies.
Hmm.
I would. He's the only mentor I would ever consider that I ever had.
Hmm.
Even though I never got a chance to meet him, but mentors don't always have to be in your
Right.
life,
Right.
but they're people that you look up to. So Bruce Lee was, yeah, he was my only mentor, and I mean, I would say the person I am nowadays
Yeah.
and my philosophy on life is all due to him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, pretty much if it wasn't for Bruce Lee during your teens, who knows what could have happened, right? Okay, so then we get to the Navy SEAL training. You're training for a year, and then it just so happens you walk down the street, like another sign, and then there's this gym with this big heavy bag in the back, and it's a Muay Thai gym. Boom. Okay, and so it's interesting that like the Muay Thai stuck out from that like VHS, and then you end up happening to be in a Muay Thai gym, and a year later, it's crazy how things work out, man. But that's awesome. So once you get into the Muay Thai gym, what happens next?
So it's fun. Yeah. I mean, the universe does crazy things, man. Now that, you're making me think about it, thinking back. But so I get into the Muay Thai gym, and I meet this Thai trainer who was an ex-fighter from Thailand, and he had about 80 fights. And by American standards, that's
That's a lot.
that's a lot of fights.
Yeah, yeah,
But in Thailand, he was still considered, like, a young fighter, even though he
yeah.
was an ex-fighter, because most fighters in Thailand have, upwards of 100 or more fights under
That's
their, belt. So,
wild, man.
but he took me in like you know, it, at some times in my life it was hard for me to say, but he took me in like a son,
Mm.
and and then other guys would come around the gym that were just like me. Their dads weren't around. They were knuckleheads in the street. They
Yeah,
didn't really have any direction. And I formed this bond with, with these guys that I trained with, and, with Tom. His name was Tommy. And, I considered him, like a dad at one point, in my life. And, he showed me a little bit more about what Muay Thai was, that it wasn't just for fighting. There's a culture behind it. There's a respect, and respect for yourself, if anything, not just respect for your training partners and your opponents in the ring, but a respect for yourself as a martial artist and a human being. So yeah, in the few months that he trained me, uh, I learned a lot of life lessons from him.
okay. And it seems like the biggest life lesson he taught you was probably respect. Just listening to what you were saying repeatedly, it's just the respect, respect, and respect. So looking at respect, how do you think respect has transformed you from, the person that you were to then eventually the person that you are today? Like what has respect done for you in terms of that, if those in that sense?
It you know it's helped me gain a deeper appreciation of the people around you.
Mm,
When you're young and you're angry at the world, you internalize everything, and you're selfish. You think, oh, it's all about me and my problems or what I got to do. But it's funny, once you respect yourself, you start to respect others around you. You understand that we're all in the same fight.
mhm.
You understand? Like, it's not just me. Like, the kid standing next to me, the mom, the dad, the business owner,
Mhm.
we're all in the same exact fight. We all have the same struggles they're just twisted and, different stories behind them. But, that's it right there, that we're all in the same fight, and you have to respect yourself so that in turn the world around you is more respectful.
That's beautiful, man. I love it. I love
Thank you.
it. So, all right. So Tommy ended up training you for a couple months in Muay Thai, and what happened after his guidance? Like you say, after a couple months, like what happened that he stopped training you?
So yeah, he was his full-time job, or he was actually an entrepreneur himself.
Okay.
He would open up Thai restaurants around the East Coast. So he would travel from Thailand, and I guess he had business partners, or actually I remember now, it was his brother that he would open up Thai restaurants up and down the East Coast. So yeah, after about 3 months, and after like as a team, I had my first fight with my training partners. Well, we didn't fight each other, but they had fights against other opponents. But he took off, and I didn't see him for a long time, and he was off doing his thing. And back then, it was hard to stay in contact with people because, again, Facebook and social media wasn't around, and I wasn't too keen on, my communication skill wasn't that great back then. But I actually haven't. I haven't seen him in a really long time, and unfortunately, we never stayed in contact.
Okay, maybe that's some homework for you after.
Yes,
reach out to him.
It's been actually homework for the past year or so, or a couple of years now.
All right. Well, so he leaves and kind of takes care of his own ventures and stuff like that. So what happens to you in Muay Thai? Do you stop the Muay Thai? Do you continue going? Do you find another mentor? What happened after that?
I try to find ways to stay in the sport or in the game, but I guess with his absence, I kind of strayed back into the streets, between the streets and hanging out, and again making bad decisions. But what happened then, actually, so my first fight was in 1996, and then a couple years later, my first son was born.
Okay.
So I guess, I mean, the void that I had with Tommy not being around, I guess, that was the most constructive way and to take up my time. So yeah, my first son was born in 1998.
Nice. Okay. So when when you were training under Tommy, were you already competing in Muay Thai? Or no?
No, not at all. He
Okay.
guided me to my first fight. So yeah, I had my first fight, and maybe I had another couple fights after that with maybe another coach and a trainer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the career started, but it was a really slow start in the beginning.
Gotcha. And then so the career started, but then you kind of went to the streets again in a way, right?
Right.
You had your first son at that moment, back in '98, and then what happened after having your first son, or how did having your first son, change your mentality at that point? Like, what happened? Did it change anything in you, or did things kind of stay the same?
Oh no, my whole entire existence changed. The time from when the doctor was holding him in the hands and he handed him to me, I'll never forget it. Like, it was just the word bliss doesn't even describe it. I don't think there are any words to describe when you have a child.
Yeah.
And because of not having my dad around, I just knew that I was going to break the cycle, because I know I never met my grandfather, but I know my grandfather was not a constructive influence in my father's life. So I just knew I was going to break that cycle. And, I knew I was going to be the best dad that I possibly could. And I went full force. I went full force into becoming a family man. And, we weren't married, but my son's mother at the time, we bought a house. I was 23 years old. I bought a house with my girlfriend. We had, car payments, and I had a job. I found a job working full time. So I head first into becoming a family man.
And so at that point, that's when you kind of took a little break from the Muay Thai, right?
Yeah. Oh
Focus on
yeah.
the family. Got you. Okay. And
Definitely.
so when you were at the time, you didn't have your own gym at all, right?
No, not at
No.
all.
Okay.
Not at
Okay.
all. I was working. I was working. For a big shipping company at the time, and I
Gotcha.
was like a courier, and yeah, I was working the night shift. So no, I was just working and
Gotcha. So you're just making ends meet, trying to provide, be there for the family type of thing.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. So then when did you go back into competing to Muay Thai? I guess professionally would be the word, after that.
Well, that's I guess there's a story behind that where
Mm.
my son's mother, uh, she obviously she had a younger brother and a younger sister,
Okay.
and she her mom was sick at the time when we bought the house, and my first son Jubei had just been born, and she passed away you know from her condition.
Hmm.
So my son's mother, her brother and sister moved in with us.
Gotcha.
So I kind of had like a full, like, even though I wanted to become a family man
Hmm.
and raise my son, like I took on two other family members that I wasn't ready for.
Mm.
So we had a full house. We had a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm a young 23-year-old kid just working and trying to pay the bills. And again, I was clueless. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just knew this was the right thing. But
Yeah.
what started to happen was, because of not knowing and being ignorant to the situation that was present or that was in front of me,
Hmm.
I started drinking again.
Mm.
And I was angry, and I started punching holes in the walls, and I couldn't handle the fact that my sons, her brother would bring home kids while I wasn't home, and they'd be smoking weed in the house. So there was just a lot of things going on, and you know we grew apart in the 2 years that we owned that house together. And again, I'm not putting any blame on anybody. I made
Mm.
some bad decisions as a young father, and yeah, we split up in about 2 years, and we sold the house.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like at the time you wanted to break the cycle set by your grandfather and your father before you, and then it was kind of like life kind of gave you more than you could handle. It's like, okay, well then here you go. Here's two more, you know, individuals you got to be responsible for, and you're 23, you're working the night shift, um, and it's kind of like, how am I going to survive? You know, so, and I'm assuming that that frustration of how am I going to survive led to, ending up you punching holes in the wall and eventually you guys separating or drifting away essentially.
Yeah, we sold the house, and we parted ways, but I made it a point to make sure that I wasn't just gonna part ways and go off and do my own thing. I made sure that I was gonna be, a father to my 1-year old at the time, and I made sure I saw him every day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but that was that was a pretty tough time in my life, but it definitely, the commitment I made to becoming a father and doing my best, I'll never regret it, because I learned a lot from that. Even though I made plenty of mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
it's helping me now going further as a father, and as a human being.
And it sounds like what the respect that you learned from Tommy, right? That respect mentality is kind of what kept you in line, so that way you respect yourself, because you told yourself that you wanted to break the cycle, you wanted to do this, and you know it sounds like you were able to do it at the end of the day, right? As bad as that situation was, you were able to still show up for Jubei every single day. It wouldn't have been the prettiest situation that we all kind of tend to look at, but at the end of the day, you were there.
Yeah. Yes.
Gotcha.
I definitely knew that I wasn't going to let, my responsibility as a father, fall to the side.
Yeah, you weren't going to let circumstances affect your responsibilities.
Yes, definitely.
All right. So let's fast forward a little bit now. So, here you are with the 1 year old. Did you find your own apartment? Did you move in with some family members? Did you just, live out of a gym? What happened after that?
I had to move back in with my mom, as reluctant, as much as I didn't want to do it. I didn't have a lot of options,
Mhm.
because I actually, not only did we sell the house and lose the car, but I got fired from my secure job that
Wow.
was providing, because of the decisions I made. And so I literally had to start from scratch, start from the bottom, and figure out a way to get back in life.
So I'm assuming you had a very serious conversation with yourself in terms of how are you going to survive again,
Yeah.
right? Now, was the option to go back to the streets, was that ever on the table again, or?
No, no, definitely not. I knew part of the reason of why I was self-destructing as a family man
Mhm.
was that I gave up, on a dream.
Mm.
I gave up on a dream that really, that lit this fire inside of me. And the reason why that became so apparent to me is because my parents, I know they gave up on dreams in their life.
Mhm.
And I just remember not wanting to be angry and frustrated, kind of like the way my parents were. So, you know, fortunately for me, I understood that because of what I chose to give up at the time, which was Muay Thai
Mhm.
and martial arts and fighting. That's what caused a lot of the you know the disappointment and the hardship that lived inside of me. So I made it a point to make sure I went back to training.
I like how you said that you figured out what caused all the disappointment, and you realized that it was your abandonment of like the martial arts. And so you're like, okay, well, 1 + 1 is equal to 2. If I go back into martial arts, perhaps I'll start getting into the right path, right?
Yeah, I definitely had to reevaluate. I did a lot of self introspection on what was going on, and
Hmm.
you know the obviously the drinking didn't help any. But when I was sober, I was able to really figure out that, look, I can't keep drowning myself every night to sleep. I
Hmm.
need to figure out a way to build myself back up, because all I was doing was breaking myself down because
Yeah.
of, whatever, feeling sorry for myself. And, we all do it. We all feel like, oh, we gotta drown the pain in something else. And, oh, woe is me. And, why is the world? No, it's not the world
Being the
against
victim.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that victim mentality. Not at all. It's like, look, you got to figure out what's going on, reevaluate, adjust, and then get back in the fight.
Damn. All right. So we're getting back in the fight now. I'm assuming you got back into martial arts. Did you go right back into Muay Thai, or was there something else in between?
Yeah, I found another Muay Thai gym that kind of, I guess, sprouted up during the time when I first started. And, so this is around the year 2000 now. So between
Mm.
96 and 2000, Muay Thai was coming up a little. So there was another Muay Thai gym that opened up in the city, and I went to go train with them.
Nice, nice. And so, how long did it take you to start training? I guess or fighting professionally uh, with that.
Well, so from 2000, I would say my amateur career restarted,
Mm.
and I fought pretty, you know, regularly, consistently up until about 2005 or 2006, and that's
Wow.
when I became a professional Muay Thai fighter.
Wow. So you fought consistently for 5 years, pretty much. And so within those 5 years, was your life trending upward, or was it still on a roller coaster, type of?
Because of my situation with my son and my son's mother. Yeah, things would bounce up and down, but I had a goal. I had a
Mm,
vision. I was going to become a professional Muay Thai fighter, and I was, again, I made a lot of mistakes, in that 5 years, but I had this destination that I was going to get to, and it took me longer than I anticipated. But again, that was my my focus, my I call it my definite chief aim. That was it. I wanted to become a professional fighter and travel the world, fight and train, and it took me 5 years, at least 5 or 6 years to get there.
what did that goal mean to you? Outside of becoming a professional fighter, like what did becoming a professional fighter? What was that going to do for you?
Well, it goes back to those words that I told myself as an 8-year old, that I was going to make a name for myself,
Mm,
or for the Romulo family,
mhm,
if anything, because when I was 8, it didn't seem like my dad was going to make a name for our family. Like there was nothing constructive that was going to happen under the Romulo household if it was just left up to my dad. So from 8 years old, I said, "This is what I'm going to do," and that helped me put me back on that path. Training and fighting as a professional Muay Thai fighter.
gotcha. Okay, so now you're pro, right? Now you're a pro Muay Thai fighter. What is your life like now? And are you is it what you thought it would be?
No, definitely not. Let's just say, Muay Thai. I mean, maybe a lot of your listeners probably don't even know what Muay Thai is, and it's still somewhat like that. So Muay Thai is not a big sport.
Mhm.
Obviously boxing and mixed martial arts nowadays. Well, kickboxing is starting to gain some traction, but there's definitely, you can't make a living financially as a professional Muay Thai fighter.
Mhm.
So, uh, yeah, there it was very, very much not. It was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be like this world traveler,
Yeah.
and making money as a fighter, as a prize fighter. But what happened was I started fighting in New York, and most of my fights were in New York City, and very rarely did I get a chance to travel outside and see the world as much as I would have liked to. But again, it was still, the passion was still there for what I was doing with
Mhm.
what I had, because I loved it. Like there's no doubt about it, because you don't become a Muay Thai fighter again because you're going to become a millionaire. You do become a Muay Thai fighter because you love it with every ounce of your spirit.
Yeah. So, you know, one of my favorite quotes is from Mike Tyson, where he's like, "Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face," right? And so, like, I want to understand like the mentality of a fighter. Like, how did like knowing that you potentially could get knocked out, right? Like, how do you face that? How do you know that I'm going to go into this ring? I'm staring at this individual. We're going to go at it, and hopefully I win, right? Like, how did you prepare for yourself for that? And like, even at times, like in the ring while you're in the fight, are you like, motivating yourself? Are you talking positively to yourself? Are you handling that, or is it just, you go into a different realm altogether?
Oh yeah, I would say there you need what I call a champion's mindset, or a fighter's mindset. You need to understand that, just like life, you're going to get hit from every angle, and sometimes you just never know where it's coming from. But if you understand that, you are in a position where, you accept these challenges, you're going to move forward. You're going to say, okay, you know, it might hurt. I might lose. I might look like a fool, but it goes back to love. I love this so much that I'm willing to deal with all this stuff so that I can, become the champion that I know that I am.
Mm,
So yeah, it takes a mindset, and it's not. Sometimes people think it's about how many sit-ups you do or how many miles you do out on the road.
yeah.
I'll always say like 60% of the actual ring fighting has nothing to do with the fighting. You know, it has to do with what's going on inside your head. Are you controlling your self-talk? You know,
Mm,
I would, you know, I tell our young fighters at the gym, you know, don't stand outside the ring, you know, preparing to step over the ropes, thinking, what is that guy going to do to me? No,
mm,
think about what are you going to do to that guy, you know?
mm.
And that's again, that goes back to life. Like if you sit back and, you know, in your business and, or at your job or as a parent thinking, oh man, what, you know, what's going to happen today? What's going to happen to me today? No, you think about what am I going to do today to make sure that I'm heading in the direction that I'm supposed to be heading. That's
So,
the champion's mindset.
so it's more of an engaged mindset, like be engaged in what you're doing as opposed to reactive. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah. So
Oh man.
most, you know, in the self-development world, it's known as the growth mindset versus
Mm.
being in the fixed mindset. I flip it and I say I'm in a champion's mindset. I'm thinking forward. I'm thinking win.
Awesome.
Even though you have to accept the losses, but I'm always, you know, I tell the kids in our gym, you know, it's not it's not always about winning,
Mhm.
but it's about wanting to win,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think because I think once you get that want to win, you end up making less excuses.
Mm,
You're like, okay,
yes.
no, like you said, it's the difference between what am I going to do to them versus what are they going to do to me. Like I'm
Right.
not worried about what they're going to do to me. I'm worried about what I'm going to do to them, right? So same thing in your business. It's like, well, whatever. What is the government going to do to my business versus what am I going to do for my business to keep it going, to keep it growing, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, awesome. So, now, how long was your professional career in Muay Thai?
So I fought from 2005 to my last fight, which was in 2011. So not too long, about 6 years.
6 years, and
Yeah.
in those 6 years, you became a world champion,
North American
North
champion.
American champion. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I never got to that goal, to my
Got
ultimate goal of world championship.
it. Well, still North America. That's I wouldn't want to fight you. So, okay. So in between, this time, is that when you started CROM PC, or did CROM PC come out after CROM Physical Culture? I'm sorry. Did that come after your professional career?
Well, during the whole time that I was training and fighting as an amateur, I wanted to have my own place, you know,
Mm,
my own gym, my own facility, what call it what you want, but I wanted my own thing to grow and show other people, you know, that you can, you know, no matter where you come from, you can at least physically empower yourself. That will lead to, and it will also lead to mental strength. But officially, I started, you know, trying to build my own program in about, I think it was 2003 is when I
mm,
started like teaching students, you know, on the side. I didn't have my own gym. I was just showing students, you know, here and there, like as a personal trainer, or, you know, at my own boxing gym where I trained. I would show, you know, other people there. And then I started, you know, building a little following until I officially, you know, um, CROM PC, or before that, it was actually known as CROM MT. That
oh,
started, yeah, yeah. So it evolved, but that started in 2010. So it
gotcha.
was from 2003 to about 2010 where I was trying to figure out how to really like open up my gym doors, you know?
Gotcha. So what I love about it is that, like, your goals take time to achieve. Like, it took you what, 5-6 years to become a pro fighter, right?
Yes.
In your amateur career, and it took you 7 years to get from I want a gym to CROM empty. And I'm assuming CROM empty was just like a handful of people in like a tiny room with a couple bags. you
Well,
know,
to be honest,
yeah.
it started yeah, in a place that reminded me of what I first found, the gym that I first found. It was a little hole in the wall, like
Yeah.
it was 1,200 square feet. You know, when we finally finished the place, the ring went wall to wall. You couldn't get to the bathroom in the back unless you had to walk through the ring and take a couple punches and kicks on the way there.
Yeah, make sure you don't drink water before coming.
Yeah.
All right. And so CROM MT was kind of like the first, all right, I have like a taste of what I want. But obviously it evolved from there. Now, how long did it take to get to the first what was it, CROM PC after CROM MT?
Yeah.
So how many years did it take for you to get to that next level? And were you still being pushed by that, I need to make a name for myself? Is that what took you to the next level?
Yeah, that again, that even till right now that we're talking, that's still my, my why or my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I remind myself every day of, why do I roll out of bed,
Gotcha.
But before we actually opened up CROM PC, Hurricane Sandy hit us in 2012 here in Rockaway Beach.
Mm.
So, for the listeners, that was just yet another bump in the road where we lost everything. We lost.
Yeah, let's not say it's a bump in the road, because I've seen pictures. It was a pretty more than a bump. So let's talk about that real quick. Here you are with CROM MT, right? And then you have a hurricane that, very rare that, I don't know if it's very rare, but it's very rare in terms of like the damage that it did to New York. And you explain it. You tell the story better. So what happened?
So we opened CROM MT in November of 2010.
And this is you and Sarah, or did you have?
Yeah, me and Sarah, and and our gym members, they helped us, build the place, and but literally 2 years later to the day, October 29th, 2012, Hurricane Sandy hits and destroys, not just our gym, but the entire Rockaways community. They called it the 100-year storm. And, you being from Florida, you're probably used to hurricanes, but, we're definitely not used to that stuff up here. So that's so I can look back at it now and call it a bump in the road, but it was more like, it was a tsunami.
Yeah, no, because the beach was literally washed away.
Yeah, the boardwalk that we had, about I would say 3 miles of a boardwalk was ripped off of the foundation. Wow. And sent 100 yards inland and destroying like a row, the rows of houses along along Rockaway Beach. But so yeah, that sent us back, and we had to again reevaluate our situation, and it made me question, do we stay in Rockaway and try to rebuild, because there was obviously always another risk of something like this happening in the future, or do we stay here and hold our ground and fight? But we decided to stay and fight, so we're here.
And so when you decided to reopen the gym, right, what changes happened? Because I think this is the coolest part, that it kind of grew back bigger and better than ever.
Yeah, well, and that's it's funny you mentioned that, because that was the first thing I told Sarah as we were like watching Hurricane Sandy roll through and destroy the Rockaways. We were sitting at my mom's house, watching the destruction and cars floating, and it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I told her we're gonna come back bigger and better than before, and we didn't know how we were gonna do that, but I just made sure that was set in our heads. It's that champion's mindset. Like, it's not about what happened to us. It's about what are we gonna do to get back up on our feet, right? So it took us, at least 4 to 5 years to get where we are now. But, we started out with obviously cleaning up the place that was destroyed. We started teaching out of, a yoga studio with some of the students that was stuck around, because we did lose a lot of our members. Not that we lost them, that they passed away, but we lost people who moved away. And
they're like,
obviously, obviously, fitness and health is not the first thing on people's mind when you're trying to rebuild your life. But, we wanted them, let people know that we weren't going to give up. And, we started teaching out of our, our rental apartment that we were that we were renting, and we would teach students in our living room. We would rent out the Knights of Columbus, catering hall, and we would teach on the dance floor. So we went through a lot of, transitions to make sure that our presence was known, that we weren't going to just lay down. And eventually we opened up, back close, literally like right across the street from where we began.
Yeah, I remember being there and you walking me down the street and you're like, hey, yeah, that's where it was, but we lost, and then here it is. And then it's like this big, beautiful gym now, man. It's awesome. It's one of the nicest gyms that I've seen, and it's just like your members love you guys. It's, just talking to them, like they love the CROM PC, they love you guys, they love Sarah, from Instagram, they love Bruce. So, and I'm looking at Gio climb the ropes, and I'm like, man, I can't even do that. So it's
Don't worry,
awesome.
I'm having a hard time doing that too now myself.
So yeah, man, I hate to cut this interview short, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I did want to get to the Hurricane Sandy part because I just think it shows that like over the course of your life, right, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. But I think the one thing that has propelled you was your concept of respect, of respecting yourself, respecting others, but then also that you have a goal to make a name for yourself. And I think that really drives the purpose. I think it's for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? You got to have a purpose, you got to have a goal in order to continue doing what you're doing, because like many entrepreneurs are facing their ups and downs in whatever kind of category, right? Like you said, everyone's got their own story. So thank you, man. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story and walking us through everything. And, tell the people what you're doing now and where we can find you, man. Because I want them to come to you. I want them to, buy your stuff. I want them to listen to your podcast. I want them to, engage because, Chris is the real deal. Chris is the real deal. I love the guy. So Chris, where can we get more of you, man?
So it's funny you mentioned something, but the one more thing that I just want to leave the listeners with, that not only was it for me to make a name for myself, it's all about service, giving back, and that that is the mission in conjunction with, I learned a long time ago that if you want to be successful in this world, it's going to directly be related to how many people you serve. So that is the mission, the definite chief aim as well. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I just started a new podcast called The 8 Count, and
it's good stuff. People go listen. It's good stuff.
Thank you, Oscar. But those there, go to those places. You'll find me there, definitely.
And then what's your Instagram handle?
It's Chris Romulo, aka CROM.
Okay.
And then what else? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter, but you can pick up my memoir on Amazon, Champions Uprising. So definitely hear a little bit more or read a little bit more about the story.
Yeah, awesome. It's a great book. I recommend it. I got a signed copy, so can't say the same for you guys, but it's a great book, and it definitely, like, if you're interested in learning more about the Hurricane Sandy situation, there's some amazing pictures in there as well that I highly recommend checking out. But the podcast, The 8 Count, for sure, go ahead and get a listen. So, Chris, thank you, man. I love you. Say hi to Sarah, Gio, Bruce, and Jabay for me, and appreciate you being on here, man, and sharing your story.
Thank you, Oscar. We love you too, man. Definitely,
all right, man.
You got to get back up here soon.
Yeah, we'll do.